YouTube, how are we doing? We have a banger leg day today, and we are starting off with a little bit of some variations for your adductors, those inner thigh muscles, because I currently don't have access to an adduction machine, so we have to get a little bit creative. And so this is how I've been starting my sessions off with the warm-ups in terms of adduction, using the bottom of a bench and doing a side lying leg lift adduction, so bringing it in towards the midline and pushing that foot as hard as we can in towards the bench. Now, another good option that we have here using our own body weight is a foot elevated side plank with a hip dip. So we're getting a bit more of an eccentric contraction with the lowering emphasis here, but then we're driving that foot into the bench and we're causing adduction on the lifting portion of this hip dip. So this is another great option for you if you are restricted in terms of your options for doing adduction and getting direct targeted work to the adductors. And I've programmed this quite a lot in terms of for athletes and things like that. And some people might be like, well, it's not the greatest and most stable position because you are in a side plank. But as a warm-up exercise, this is getting a lot of the job done in terms of tissue prep and getting your body temperature warm, especially as a total body type emphasis. Now, if you did want to then treat this a bit more as a primary exercise, we can add load in a couple of different ways. Here is one example of using the dumbbell. I feel like this is generally one of my favorite ways because the dumbbell slightly rests on your outer thigh, so it doesn't fall around too much. Now, it isn't the most stable pattern compared to any adductor machine, but it gets the job done for providing some external load. Now, another good alternative option is putting a plate on the lower leg, and you still use your hand a little bit to stabilize that, but that's actually now getting a bit of a double whammy, so we're actually getting some isometric adduction on the downward leg as well. And so these ones are tough, as you can see, and they fail out pretty quickly with the 45. So this is another great primary exercise stimulus. Now, some people do feel a little bit of medial knee pain when they do this, so you can put your foot and leg further onto the bench, so decreasing the moment arm, which will decrease the amount of strain that you'll get at the knee joint. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And I actually saw this on TikTok recently and thought, hey, I don't have an adductor machine, but I do have a cable stack. Let's give this a go. And it was a little bit funky in terms of the setup, and I didn't really know what to do with my feet, so I had them kind of floating. But this actually did kind of work. Now, it's not going to be the greatest load, and it's not going to have the same resistance profile as what you would get with a normal adductor machine, but again, it got the job done. Now, I always do abduction when I do adduction, so in terms of going back to some basics here, again, we don't have a abduction machine either, and so I set up a cable abduction. Now, I had to take my shoes off because I kind of attached the cuff, and this cuff that I have doesn't have like a clip, so I had to take the shoe off to be able to actually fit my leg into it. And we're just doing it kind of more as a lateral abduction, in terms of just taking the glute out to the side. So there's not really too much emphasis on going into deeper hip flexion or anything like that, or it being kind of more of a kickback position. I just kind of want it to be more of a side abduction. And so this one is a little bit annoying with the specific cup I have, because I have to then take my shoe off to be able to do the next exercise. So me using my big guy brain, I actually then decided to actually take my shoes off for the second time, which made it obviously a little bit faster to transition between sets. And this all served as preparation for squatting for today's session. Now, you will have seen in previous videos, I do typically like to have calf raises in before squatting as well, but recently I've been doing calves on my upper body days, so I don't actually directly target them as much in this leg day. I probably could use it in the warm-up, but instead I just decided to get the Smith machine warm-up done after doing quite a bit of adduction and abduction focus in the warm-up so far. So we use a little bit of a cluster warm-up technique here, where we leave quite a few repetitions in reserve for the feeder sets before actually getting to the main working set of the day. And then hitting that main working set, I was a little worried that I might fail in the bottom position. So rather than not having any spotter there at all, I did put the spotter arms up. And you'll notice I am using a yoga mat as well, because this bar is brutal for some reason on my upper back, in terms of the compression. So I don't typically like it. Now, for some reason, Smith machine has always felt a little awkward to me in terms of squatting. I do feel like it's a little bit more like a hack squat, especially as it is a Smith machine that is angled. But either way, we get the reps done and we push as far as we can. Now, this was probably me pushing out a little bit, so I did do a slight back down set in terms of the second set, just to get a bit more repetition going in. But I will say that probably overcooked it in terms of the amount of warm-up exercises that I did before going into this movement. Now, this is something that I'm definitely going to be working up as the weeks go on, so make sure you stay locked in with me, because we are going to be hitting squat, even if it might not be the best quad builder in this specific program. So once we're done with this exercise, we do then go and hit a little feeder set for knee extension. And you might be thinking, well, your quads are already warm, why would you do this? And quite honestly, I don't necessarily need to have this extra set in there, and this is just mainly for me in terms of warming up, making the patella feel pretty good, and seeing actually how much capacity I have for when I go and switch it to the unilateral variations. So I consider these to be the two main working sets. So we hit it single leg, pushing the reps to failure. We are in double-digit reps. Unfortunately, I cannot gym pin this machine, as it is one of those machines where it has to flick over the switch. So we are a little bit limited in mode. So we are doing the stack, and we just have to keep adding volume on volume until I get into the new facility that I'm going to be working out at soon. And you've probably heard me ramble on about this before, and it's generally one that's up for debate in terms of whether to do this exercise first in the program or to do it after squat. I've always found that I'm able to push my squat numbers a little bit better when I do this after rather than doing this first, whereas I don't think my knee extension numbers so far in terms of the amount of repetitions that I've been able to achieve with this specific load has not dropped off after doing heavier squatting. So there are going to be people out there that respond very positively to pre-exhaust. I am not one of those people, and that's why I'm doing this protocol in the way that I am. And you'll also notice I am trying to stick to the theme of training the left side first, as this is the weaker side. Although, based on my most recent DEXA, we did see that there isn't any change or differences in muscle mass between the left and right legs. There is a little bit in terms of the left side and upper quarter. So that kind of also corroborates with my muscle girth results that we did a couple of weeks ago too. And similar to the leg extension, we also do the same set structure for the leg curl as well. We are doing it in a seated position with the seat up. I am hugging the support cushion as well, just to get that slight little bit more stretch on the hamstrings at the hip. We hit that one set of two leg because although we did do abductors, and we squatted and then leg extension, we didn't really get any real hamstring warm. So although my core temperature and blood flow and all that is good and high, we didn't actually get a good warm up, so that's no reason for doing a double leg exposure before going into a single leg. And this one I do not stack, so we're not worrying about gym pins or anything else like that. But we are again sticking with the theme of hitting the left side first and grinding out those reps. And I think for me, I do actually think my hamstring development has come a long way during this prep, but I do feel like hamstrings is still a weak point, especially as I've had quite a few strains in the past, which if you've been following along, you probably knew that already. So general theme of this session and most of my sessions is taking most of these lifts to failure. And so there might be maybe one walk in the tank here and there, but especially with leg curl, at this kind of point in the set, you'll see I start to slow down quite significantly, and the burn kicks in, and I just have nothing left in the tank. So keeping these as primary stimulus, it's one set of the double leg and then hitting 2 sets of the single leg before then moving into our accessory work. So we do have a Roman chair in this facility, so I am using it. Generally, I would probably use the barbell as you've seen in past videos, but right now I'm using dumbbells. I'm not using the most maximum weight here. I'm trying to get a little bit of a focused tempo, so about a 1 second control in both phases. Now, we could argue that time of attention and tempo doesn't really matter here, but generally for a feel thing, I don't do tempo. I normally feel this a lot more in my lower back than I do in my glutes. So by slowing it down just that little bit, I can focus on driving the glutes into hip extension, and then that means I feel that they're the primary stimulus that is moving my trunk around. Now, we haven't had this in the program yet, and I haven't done many supersets, but because we're in the Roman chair, I just decided to hit some thigh bends in there to get a little bit of oblique work. And it's not a primary muscle group that really needs to get much love, especially in bodybuilding prep. But as we haven't done many of these for a little while, I thought I'd throw them in. And there is a little bit of glute medius in there in terms of with the trunk kind of lean. So I do feel my glute a little bit acting isometrically. So we are getting a slight fractional set here for the glute too. So just because we were here, that's why I kind of did that specific superset. And then rounding this session off, we are hitting quads and with a little bit of glute focused in this type of leg press. And the one thing that I will say about leg press is, generally speaking, we can get more reps at a higher relative load. So say we're working at 70% of our 1 repetition max, and with that in mind, because of the additional stability it does give, I feel like that we can put this at any place in the session. So under fatigue, hitting a single leg press right at the end gives you that extra last little bit of quad exposure. So I think in terms of total working sets for today, if we include the bilateral set on the leg extension as well, we are hitting around about 6 sets. So that isn't that much volume in terms of exposure for the quads in the given leg day. So again, I think we could potentially go a little higher, but by the end of this, we're definitely gassed and we're definitely ready to go home and get into the gym. Now, this is definitely one of those exercises as well where if you do have variations that you want to hit in your own personal program, say like a dumbbell rear foot elevated split squat, a walk and learn, a Smith machine squat, sissy squat, any of those type patterns, you can always switch this out and put those in there instead. Or another option is we could theoretically just stay in the leg extension if equipment is one of those that it's kind of scarce and limited and there's a lot of people that use it. Then you could definitely just hit extra sets of leg extensions to get yourself to that kind of 6 set total. However, I feel like because there is that little bit of fractional set work with glutes here, and we're not necessarily getting too much glute work in, except for at the start of the session with the abduction, this is a good rounded option with those other kind of single leg patterns that I mentioned, also offering some good stuff. Now, I did say that I was not going to be doing any calves on leg day as much anymore. However, the calves are feeling pretty good. Decided to throw a set in here, and so that's why we're going to finish this session off with calves, because we're on the leg press and I generally do get the deficit calf raise here. So hopefully you made it this far in the video. Hopefully you learned a little bit as we went along, and hopefully you can follow those lifts as well. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you follow for more.